calm, stable, and strong in the face of uncertainty. At this morning's intensive, our sweet, beloved sister Denise Lawrence will share insights on how we can upgrade our resilience.
Thank you so much, Madhavi, and very nice to be here once again at the One's Intensive. So what I would like to do is take us through two aspects. First part of this is to do with using the knowledge. And the second part of it is to do with using, because he says so, God says, I'm here for you, use me. And so we'll talk also about how you do that and how many people just don't do that because they're not quite clear about what that is. But let's begin with using the knowledge. I think that a lot of people assume that as long as you feel okay, it means everything is okay. And how you feel about yourself, how you feel about circumstances varies from day to day. And consequently, my personal approach is that how you feel about things doesn't necessarily prove or disprove anything. So one of the things that is said about Raj Yoga is that it is also called Gyan Yoga, which means the yoga of knowledge. And Raj Yoga is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Murlis, Baba very often makes reference to the Bhagavad Gita, and there are many quotes from the Bhagavad Gita that you may or may not recognize, depending on the extent to which you are aware about the contents of the available Bhagavad Gita that you can buy in the shops. And this is said to be the original knowledge of the Gita. And God is called the giver of the knowledge of the Gita. And so the second chapter of the Gita is also called the Yoga of Knowledge. So knowledge is very important. Knowledge in Hindi is called Gyan. And in Brahma Kumaris, we use the expression, we say we are in Gyan and we are yogis. And that means the knowledge is very important. The practice of yoga is very important. And what we're looking at today is how to use the knowledge for the explicit purpose of being calm, stable, and strong in the face of great uncertainties. And there are some uncertainties that are becoming more and more certain, but which are not necessarily conducive to making you feel stable, strong, and calm. And this is why it's very important to become very skilled in applying the knowledge. So what we are seeing during all of 2024, we're now more than halfway through, and there are some predictions that are part of this practice of yoga and knowledge. And it is very clear that this practice, this knowledge is given to us in the circumstances of adversity, which in the Bhagavad Gita are called the circumstances of war. So there are different kinds of wars, and some of them are as close to you as the war between you and yourself in your mind. And it goes further and further out. There are many circumstances within your family situation, which could be called war in the family, disputes, conflict. There is war in the community, and we are seeing this increasing, intensifying quite drastically. There is a war between ourselves and the climate in the context of climate change, and there are very severe aspects of the weather which are impacting all of us turn by turn. Big storms, floods are happening a great deal. The weather patterns are very uncertain, so the agriculture is very much impacted, which means food production, which means prices go up. There are certain parts of the world which are, as we speak, at war, very intense war, and consequently there are refugees, there are many injured people. There is a great deal of anxiety going on between the different sides of the different wars, and these are intensifying as we speak. And so these are certain uncertainties. I call them certain because they're there and they're intensifying, and they don't really look like they're going away anytime soon. So what that means is that it's very important for us to become even more skilled in using the knowledge, because, as I said before, the knowledge is given in circumstances of adversity. And the circumstances of adversity are increasing and intensifying. There is also a form of war between yourself and your body, yourself and your mind, because there are accidents, illnesses that give us a great deal of difficulty with our physical bodies, and the kinds of pressures that people are under are creating mental health issues, extreme fatigue, just inability to manage the day-to-day stresses. And of course, none of us are getting any younger. And so there is the question of age. And ultimately, it is the relationship between oneself and the end of this life. For each of us, it's coming closer and closer. And this is also a very important part of the practice of Raj Yoga, and the knowledge is a preparation for a letting go of people, places, and things, and transitioning and moving on. And all of these things are presented in the knowledge as part of life. I think we're also dealing with something that I call the narrative. So whatever you hear in the media, from the governments, from the different sources, and they will give you a picture about reality which may or may not be realistic, which may or may not be true, which may or may not be reasonable, and therefore there is a conflict between what you feel is what's going on and what you hear is what's going on. So this can also create or does create quite a measure of uncertainty. And when there is uncertainty, it is more difficult to decide which bit of the knowledge to apply to what. And so I want to take a look at that. So there are instruments that we are given in the knowledge, and the one that is the most famous and which is also subtle and complex, and that is the cycle. And so the cycle is not so much a fact as an instrument. So it's important to learn how to use the knowledge of the cycle as an instrument. So basically, the knowledge of the cycle says that everything keeps going round and round and up and down. The soul arrives on the earth at a certain point in time, which is your highest stage. And you pass through a number of reincarnations, gradually declining as time goes by. And eventually you reach a point which is called the end of the cycle, where there is also a new beginning. This is a crossover time, which we call the confluence age. So you have very strong energies going on at the end of the cycle. You have the strong energy of disintegration of the old cycle and the arrival of all the elements of the new cycle. And we know that each cycle is an identical repetition. So people have problems with these ideas, and it's very difficult to use the knowledge while you still have problems with the ideas. And so I want to take up the idea of an identically repeating cycle and how this idea is an instrument. And it's more useful to think of it as an idea than a fact. And people are used to looking at things as facts and then arguing about them in the approach that, well, if this is a fact, then we have all kinds of arguments to prove that it is wrong. And so you spend a lot of time doing that. But in the process of doing that, you never really learn how to use it. And so therefore, I think the first approach, the first way to deal with it is an idea. And an idea is something that you work with very differently from facts. So looking at the idea of an identically repeating cycle changes how you feel about existence. We have two kinds of thinking. Pretty much everyone is raised in linear thinking. You're raised to think of everything having a beginning and carrying on at a certain point. There is an end. So before the beginning, there is nothing. After the end, there is nothing. And so it's very, you can say, limited because it has a limit of beginning, a limit of end. And you cannot really use that idea for anything in particular. But the idea of an identically repeating cycle is an instrument, and it has uses, and we need to know how to use this information. So there are a number of points that I'd like to point out to you, which are implied by an identically repeating cycle. And this is connected with the idea that we were given by Einstein, which is that matter cannot be created or destroyed. That means it's permanent. It goes through changes, but it's permanent. So the idea of the earth coming into being and then disappearing is taken out by this idea of matter being eternally existing. And of course, you could argue against it, but actually the planet Earth is the only planet so far discovered which has the particular ratio of air, earth, fire, water, and ether, which are the fundamental elements of matter as we know it on the Earth. Now, the other thing that goes with that is an idea which is not in the world of science, but which you do find in the world of religion, and that is that the soul is permanent, the soul is eternal and immortal. When you have an identically repeating cycle, it means that you as an individual soul are permanent. There has never been a time when you didn't exist as an individual, and there never will be a time when you do not exist as an individual, and you pass through many changes. You take one body and you leave it and then take another. So your individual body is not permanent, but the fact that you reincarnate is permanent. And even though the soul, when it reaches the end of a time cycle, returns to what we call the soul world or the world of light, that's just for a short period, and then the soul comes back into the cycle of death and rebirth, or incarnating, living, leaving the body, reincarnating, and passing through the whole cycle. And it is also said that each soul has a role which is contained within the soul, and this is called your story or your destiny. And on top of that, you have the philosophy of karma, which means that what you do freely, except insofar as you are limited by various different factors like conditioning, morality, destiny, and ill-informed choices. So there is also the matter of free will. So you have destiny, you have free will, you have karma, all of which are, in one sense, mutually exclusive if you're in linear thinking. And if you are in spherical thinking, I call this spherical thinking, where you're thinking about the continuous repetition of the cycle, you will always be there no matter what happens. And everything is survivable by that definition, which means that our relationship with endings is must be changed, because an end is not the finality. An end is just a precursor to another beginning. There is one, I think, very interesting quote in the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, which is the Yoga of Knowledge, which says, everyone who's dead will get born, and everyone who's alive will die. So we have to remember this. And when you're in linear thinking, when you think about, oh, this people or this person died, this many people died, you have a reaction to it, which is, it is a bad thing. Whereas with the knowledge, when you're using the knowledge, you say, well, it may be a bad thing depending on how the person died, but it is inevitable. There is a degree of destiny in it. There may be some element of karma in it. And when the call of death comes, if you're very powerful, you can resist it, but not indefinitely. And so our relationship with life and death is, I know that I will leave this body and I will take another one, but either self will never cease to exist. So the expression I will die actually doesn't have proper meaning, because when you think about the self as a soul, you cannot die. And what it also means is no one can get lost. Sometimes when somebody dies, you say, I lost this person or that person. The body was lost, no doubt, but the person was not. If you have karma with that person, good karma, harmonious karma, they'll be back. And you continue on your journey with that person or those people, maybe in a different form. So our relationship with the form, the physical form, changes. Now, one of the things that people have a big problem with is suffering. Of course, you have a problem with suffering, but we have been given powers. And this is very important we have to keep all of these elements of knowledge together and not look at them in isolation. So I'm bringing them into the mix one by one. Because normally people cannot think about everything all at once, all the time. It's too big. However, as we begin to study more and more deeply, we become quite capable of remembering everything all at once, all the time, which means the intellect becomes unlimited. You hear this word unlimited quite often, but not many people know what is the meaning of unlimited. So it's opposite of limited. That means if you have limited thinking, you're not taking into account all things. If you have unlimited thinking, you are taking into account all things. So then you have to count them up and see if you've got them all. And then you can prepare yourself to practice, to think in an unlimited way. So the powers, I'm adding the powers to the mix. So the powers we have are especially in this regard, the power of accommodation and the power of tolerance. So when there is suffering, we need to be able to tolerate it, and we must also accommodate it, because sooner or later there will be suffering. And one of the difficulties for people who are spiritually inclined and sensitive is they're very empathetic. And maybe you can handle your own suffering, but you can't handle somebody else's suffering. So therefore, we have to be able to use the knowledge for that as well. When we're thinking of karma, we're also thinking about whether actions are good or bad. And how do we determine whether something's good or bad? Well, the knowledge tells us that the best way to determine it is whether it puts you in profit or loss. So you can calculate it in the same way as you calculate your money. And whether you do actions which cost you or actions which bring you into profit. So we have credit with people. If you have interaction with people that is based in the original qualities of the soul, then you will have credit with people, purity, peace, power, love, bliss. You may do a negative action to someone that will put you in debt. Someone else may do a negative action to you. If you take it in, that puts you in debt. Anyway, it puts them in debt, but you have option whether to take it in or not take it in. So one of the things we learn is how to not take in negativity, because if you allow negativity to come in, that's your choice, and you will pay. And so that puts you in loss. Therefore, it is not recommended. Now, here we are in circumstances where there's a lot of violence going on around us, and this can create anxiety. It has been predicted that the world is changing, civilization is changing, civilization as we know it is falling away, and it falls away in the context of violence. And if you look at history, every so often there are civilizations which rise, they persist for some time, and they fall away. This is the way of the world ever since, pre-recorded history, and it's not going to change. This is a natural law of the human experience. Civilizations rise, persist for a while, and they fall away. So the knowledge of the cycle tells us that there are different ages. You have the Golden Age, which is one civilization. Then you have the Silver Age, which is another civilization. And then you have the Copper Age, where things break up into different parts, and each part is its own civilization. They rise, they persist, they fall. Some of them coexist, some of them are sequential. Then you have the Iron Age, and the Iron Age has also several civilizations. And at the present moment, we have what is called Western civilization, which is the dominant one in the world today. And it is in the process of breaking up and breaking down and falling apart. And this is the context in which we are working with this concept of being calm, strong, and stable in the face of uncertainty. So what I'm saying is it's not as uncertain as we might think. Definitely the current civilization is disintegrating, falling apart. And so what does one do in that kind of situation? How are we impacted by it? What else is happening? And what the cycle tells us is that we are in the confluence age, which means that at the same time as the current civilization is falling away, there's a new civilization which is arising, and there is a convergence between the falling away of one and the arising of another. And at the same time as the civilization falling away, the sort of infrastructure of the planet is also undergoing great change, because at the moment we are very aware that we are experiencing climate change, and that you cannot change the direction of the climate change. So the climate change is taking the form of the world is heating up. And I believe that there were 3 days in July, which are the hottest ever recorded on the planet. And every few days, temperature records are breaking, and people are having a very hard time dealing with just the temperature, and the agriculture is suffering. And also the kind of weather patterns that are becoming normal are pretty catastrophic. And there are many things happening which, that there's no possibility of reversing it. And so we have to accept it. This is also not what I would call an uncertainty. The collapse of the balance of climate is certain. And so this is very stressful for people. It is life-threatening. And so it is a very big deal to be calm, stable, and strong when you happen to be in an area which is flooding or where there is big collapse of mountains and cliffs, sinkholes. There are many volcanoes are active at the moment, and so all these things are certain to intensify. But what's very uncertain about it is, can we make it through? Can we survive it? What should we do? And how do we prepare for that? And so we have been given powers, as I said before, not just the two powers of accommodation and tolerance, but other powers, all of which come to our assistance when it becomes our turn to face a very strong act of climate change, a hurricane, a storm, the glaciers melting, lack of water, too hot, no way to keep cool, people dying of heat stroke. All of these things are there. And plus, what we have very much is that people are getting more and more into violence. And this is also unlikely to reduce, because the stresses that make people violent are not showing any signs of going away. And so this is a very, very important certainty that we must deal with. And so we have been given this knowledge and this practice specifically for times of difficulties. This is not for ordinary times. Now, the study and practice of Raj Yoga as given through Brahma Baba by Shiv Baba in the context of the Brahma Kumaris organization, there have been more than 80 years of doing this practice in circumstances that are relatively manageable and normal and okay. And it has always been said, use this time to prepare yourself and strengthen yourself, calm yourself, make yourself stable, because sooner or later, circumstances will not be so manageable, not be so normal as they have been. And it seems that we are coming to that time where we really need this strength. And many people who are in this practice are saying, okay, I can see that things are happening the way the predictions have said, but my personal stage is not at the level that is needed for managing it. Of course, there are some who have developed that stage, but there are many who came a little later in the historical time frame of the practice, and they will say, well, I haven't had enough time to do this. What shall I do? And there are others who have been doing it for a long time, but maybe haven't taken it as seriously as is needed to manage it at the present level or foreseeable future levels. And so this is why I want to talk about using the knowledge, especially the knowledge of the cycle. So using the knowledge of the cycle means you're looking at time, circular time, forwards as well as backwards. So you're seeing yourself as someone who is following the course of the cycle. That means you have passed through the golden age, you passed through the the silver age, the copper age, the iron age. And since all cycles are identical repetitions, you've also passed through this time. And you've also been in this situation, in this condition at this time, every time it comes around. and you also got through it. And you also got through what is known as the destruction. And you got through that, and you arrived in the new cycle, and you went through that, and here you are again. And so you are not here for the first time. You have been in this situation many, many times. And what the knowledge of the cycle says is you made it. And so this is a very important concept to hold on to. I am here. I have been here many times, and every time I make it, and then I'm here again because I made it. So here we are. That means that you have been through climate change, even at its very extreme. You have been through war, even to the extent of nuclear war. You have been through many lives. You're still here. Everybody else is still here. There are times when you are with this person or that person, but every time you change lives, you also change the people who are with you. Some of them remain the same, some of them change. Nobody gets lost. And you also don't get lost. And the thing is to really apply this knowledge to the point where you are easy about everything that is happening. So calm, stable, and strong is being easy about it all. Strong means also that you have a strong connection with incorporeal God. Now, not only does matter not change, not only does the cycle repeat identically, not only am I eternal, but also the Supreme Being is eternal and, stable and not involved in all of this disintegration of the cycle and reintegration and beginning of the next cycle, but knows all things and is particularly present to guide us through these very difficult times of upheaval and change. And so this guidance has been going on for a long, long time. We have all the information that we need, but we have to become good at applying it. And you have to apply different bits of the information at different times, but very important to learn how to hold all the information in your mind all the time so that you can shift between one or another aspect of which part needs to dominate in which situation so that it carries you across. So it's all about carrying you across situations. And so the situations are difficult, troublesome, but you have what you need in order to get across them. This is a study and it's a practice. So let me now look at the aspect of using God, because he says, use me. I'm here, I'm available, use me. And then many people, they say, well, how? And some people, they say, well, all we have to do is give our problems to God and he will solve them. And he says, no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you use me. Think again. So first of all, we have to really look at the different ways in which BKs have decided that this is the meaning of using God. He says, no, you need to keep connection with me. And you need to understand that there are certain things you do that reinforce your connection. and other things you do that break your connection. And so you need to be aware of those things and be aware that your connection with God is for the explicit purpose of drawing spiritual power into yourself, because when you're in the relationship with God as a devotee, as a religious person who is asking God to do this and that to solve their problems and so on, he looks at that as, okay, you are asking, you are praying, you are begging, and you are my children, so my children do not beg. My children have rights. I have an inheritance to give. You have a right to the inheritance, but you need to understand how to claim it. So one part of the inheritance is the knowledge. So you must really learn how to study it. And secondly, the inheritance is power, the power of yoga. So you have been given the powers, but if you do not take possession of them, which you do by intensifying your yoga, then you haven't actually claimed the power. So you have to claim the knowledge by studying it really well, and claim the power by meditating in the way that he tells us to meditate. That means you must take power from the incorporeal into yourself. You must practice to be independent of your body. So all the things which make you feel not calm, not strong, not stable, are things that enter your consciousness through your sense perception. And when you practice yoga, it is specifically to make yourself independent of sense perception, so you can switch it on and off at will. And this is something that not all BKs are aware about for some reason. They don't practice it like that, but it needs to be practiced like that. So you need to think about material that comes into your consciousness in terms of information or observation. So you are doing this practice in the context of a variety of circumstances. And incorporeal God says, do all these things in my remembrance. Because when you do action in the remembrance of God, this is called, you are doing karma yoga. That means you are in yoga whilst engaged in various different actions. So if you don't do this, you're not using God. If you do this, you are. And so the thing is to be aware of the extent to which one is distracted from the remembrance of God by sensory input. And this is why he says, okay, you need to meditate in a certain way through the day, in certain configurations at certain times and so on, because if you can have sufficient time in remembrance, you'll be able to acquire sufficient strength to manage all these circumstances that you have to pass through. Some of the circumstances are called tests, and they will test your strength, test your faith, test your understanding of the knowledge. Some of the circumstances are settlement of karma. And so there you need to have enough yoga power within yourself that you can handle illnesses, opposition, whether it comes from your Lokik family, from the BK family, from the general world beyond, And then you will be able to check how you're doing. Now, people very often ask me, do you give an example of this, that, and the other? I never do that because examples are always hypothetical and they never apply to you. So you have to have your own circumstances that you analyze yourself, applying the knowledge to your own particular situation. And hypothetical examples will never enable you to understand anything at all. So definitely forget about that. But actually, the most important thing is to be very clear about where your weaknesses are, what exactly you are having difficulty facing and dealing with. Because if you don't do that, then you will never be able to have clarity or be honest with yourself. So I would definitely recommend that you do not look for some external example, but you have lots of examples in your own life. So look at yourself. And in fact, the practice of Raj Yoga involves looking at the self and paying attention to the fact that God, the Supreme Being, is accessible to you, but you must keep that channel open. And you keep that channel open by regularly being in remembrance. Now, we have a routine of meditation that we all are practicing. And the most important is the early morning, which we call Amrit Vela. And much importance is given to this because this is the time which God has allocated to those who are practicing Raj Yoga. If you meditate at another time, that's good, but it doesn't have the same intensity. And this is because there are other people who are in other religions. They pray to God, they meditate, they remember, and God has to give attention to all these souls. But this time is given specially to us, and therefore it is up to us to take full advantage of it. It is very important for us to have our own personal sense of discipline. So we need to follow these recommendations, have early morning meditation, take time through the day for a few minutes, half an hour at other times, where you keep, as it were, topping up your daily intake of spiritual power. And when you do this practice regularly and frequently, then you're able to accumulate. And some people, they don't meditate that much, so they accumulate a little bit, but then they use it all up on the same day. Well, Daddy Janki, when she was teaching us, she would say, okay, now in terms of accumulating your yoga, you have to decide whether you're earning an hourly wage and you just spend it right away, or you have a weekly wage and you get your money at the end of the week and you have to budget it, or you get a salary at the end of the month, or you may get a large sum on a yearly basis. And the idea is that if you just take a little and spend it right away, you'll never accumulate anything. And so consider yourself to be someone who budgets your strength, budgets your power. And in order to budget well, you need to have a good sense of balance. So your account, your financial account, has a section of it called balance. Balance means what's left over by the time you've spent what you have to spend. So make sure that your balance is not in the negative because you want to accumulate. Think of it also in terms of accumulating enough spiritual power that will take you through the full cycle of 84 births, because what incorporeal God says to us is this is the time to absorb this power, and you will not be able to absorb it at any other time in the cycle. So take full advantage of the confluence age, where you can take as much as you want, as much as you can. It's up to you. The doors are open. God is saying, I am fully available. Now use me. That means take as much as you want. Be as greedy as you want, because this is your only chance to fill yourself all the way to the top. So when you come into this practice, you're coming in your last life. And so your last life assumes that you have used up your accumulation from the previous cycle. Now the soul is hungry and empty, looking for God, who is the source of spiritual power as well as spiritual wisdom. And once you find your source, then you have to sit with yourself and take maximum benefit. Take as much as you can, as often as you can, because it's also given to us in the context of settlement of karmic debt. So karmic debt, you don't know exactly what your karmic debt is, but you know that you have a certain amount, and then you have to pay. And you pay this with your accumulation of yoga. Now, it's possible you may have a very heavy karmic account and you have to pay a large amount. So make sure you have plenty so that you can pay. And it happens in life. All of a sudden, something happens and you have a very heavy debt that you must pay, or maybe there's an accident, you have to pay medical insurance, or something like this can be a heavy debt. And if you have in reserve, then you can pay it, and it's not a problem. So yoga and financial resources are comparable, because life can be very expensive when we get ourselves into some or another debt with someone or a circumstance, or karmic accounts come for payment. You have to pay them, no way out. Another aspect of the cycle, which I want to just mention before I finish, and that is that the cycle has to be rotated. If you look at the cycle without rotating it, you can't operate it. It's an instrument which does things when you rotate it. And when you spin the cycle, what you find is that all moments eventually become the same because they go so fast. An example of that is the rotation of a spinning top, which has got all the colors of the rainbow on it. And when you spin it, they all become white. And this is a good metaphor for this. And you need to have a sense of yourself as being the person who's golden aged, silver aged, copper aged, iron aged, and confluence aged. And you have all of these stages spinning to the point where you are equal in the face of all the different stages, and you are in your power. And the importance of spinning something is that it becomes a wheel that remains in the same plane. So it's a steadying instrument. It is a gyroscope. And so if you want to be calm, steady, and strong, then have this gyroscope, spin this gyroscope, and you will not be made unsteady by circumstances. So this is just a very basic overview of the instrument of the cycle and the yoga, the aspect of God saying to you, I'm available, use me. The knowledge is available, use it, take possession of it, and enable yourself to get through these times of upheaval in the best possible way. So if you're a new BK, it means you're starting off with a certain amount of uncertainty about what this is and how this works. And you don't necessarily get teachers who will guide you to the point where you really feel that you know what you're doing and so on, but it will come. So we have to be patient. And Dadi Janki used to say to us, if you can do Amrit Vela, you can do anything, which means she knew very well that this is not an easy thing to do, but we do need to ease ourselves into it. So you can think about your Amrit Vela in perhaps a different way. Now, the thing about Amrit Vela is you need to actually tune the knowledge in the initial stages in order to get anywhere at all. And you need to decide the night before what you will meditate on. Give yourself some themes and meditate for, say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Because you need to gradually bring yourself up to the point where you can meditate for the regular 45 minutes or hour or whatever it is. Because when you want to establish a discipline of meditation, especially with the Amrit Vela, it takes time to get it going. And you don't want to be just doing it like a routine thing where you just sit there staring at a red oval with a little point of light in the middle and wondering what you're doing there. No, bring yourself into the process of meditation and give yourself this definition of meditation, which is that think about something that's worth thinking about. And what's really worth thinking about is different aspects of the knowledge. You need to consider them. You need to think about it in lots of different ways, approach it from different angles, so that you gradually get a sense of what it is. And don't stay thinking on one thing too long because you'll run out of stuff to think about. So give yourself maybe 3 or 4. And do not force yourself, and do not think that there's something wrong with you if you find it difficult or you can't do it. I think it's just important to learn how to think deeply. And you do that by taking a few points from the Murli that seem particularly interesting to you and just consider them for a while. And then maybe go back to it after a little while. And karmatit means you want to finish all your karmic accounts, which means you're trying to raise them from your subconscious into your conscious mind. And you cannot handle when all of them come up all at once. That will destroy you. You need to meditate regularly, and meditation causes different karmic accounts to come up for settlement. And then when they come up for settlement, then you have to settle them, which means you have to have power to settle them. And slowly, slowly, you gradually build your stage, and you understand that something called sin is not an individual action, but a series of actions of the same type, which you repeatedly do, rather like an addiction, and that you are gradually getting yourself free from that set of repeated counterproductive actions until you become free. It's a very serious practice. And you want to do it systematically and gradually, because then you will have success. Well, first of all, you have to know what conscience is. And conscience is a natural instrument within you that lets you know whether something is right or wrong, or true or false. And if you listen to it and then act on that basis, you will move forward well. The problem is many people go against their conscience, and that is something you need to stop doing. But it's not so easy to stop doing, because there is a high price to pay when you follow your conscience, and you need to become aware of that, you see, because there are many things in this world which try to get you to go against your conscience. And if you don't do that, you will be penalized. So you have to see, do you have enough strength to manage that? Also, again, go gradually, because otherwise you won't be able to manage it. But begin to listen to the voice of conscience and follow what you know to be right, what you know to be true. It's a gradual process. When you have severe pain, it is a test, and that test will be with you and getting more and more as time goes by, because it means every day you have to deal with it. And when pain becomes very, very severe, then it is a message from pain saying to you, look, I'm going to give you a lot of pain until you finally get it, that you can surrender to the pain and not hold on to it, you see, because people experience pain to be painful because they hold on to it. They hold on to it by resisting it, by fighting it. This is a way to make it worse. You need to surrender to it and let go of it. And this is the practice of letting go of so many of the things that you have to let go of. And it can be said that pain of one kind or another, chronic pain, is karmic account settlement, but a more effective is to say, okay, this pain is there to teach me that I need to let go. I need to surrender to the pain. I need to not hold on to it like I have been. I need to have a completely different relationship with pain. And then you will begin to understand more subtle things. So pain is a great teacher, but you have to listen carefully to pick up the wisdom. This is very subtle. And so you have to sit with it and play with it and go into the depth of it, experiment with it. I think you will have better results. Yeah. What you're looking at is overall strengthening and development of yourself. And all of these things that come along, they're tests. And there's nothing wrong with one test or another test or another test. And you take the test, you evaluate yourself, how you did, according to your own sense of evaluation. And what you're trying to do is become more subtle, more wise, more able to manage these various different tests. And it's a long-term project. You need to understand this. That's what I would say. Raj Yoga itself is to be in connection with God. And so you have to think about who are you and who is God for you, and do it like that. It's much more satisfactory. The aim of Raj Yoga is to understand yourself as an immortal soul and come into connection with the incorporeal God, the Supreme Soul. And so if you want to be a mystic, you can. But, most people, they don't really learn Raj Yoga in order to be a mystic. You have to understand yourself and what you want to accomplish. So first of all, you want to try and understand What is this? And then slowly, slowly integrate the different elements. Well, let us turn within and let all the various complications of life just fall away for a moment and just be the star, the tiny point of light in the world of light. Connect with the Supreme One and allow that energy, power, beauty, sweetness to just flow in and fill up. So take care and have a very, very beautiful day. No worries, no problems. Let it be. Om Shanti.